Wow. Well, thank you, Joe, for that generous introduction. You told the story, but you didn't tell it all the way. Actually, the money-making phase of my career ended when my partners made me pro bono partner of our law firm, because I found that I was representing strap hangers against the MTA and people defending family planning clinics and shutting down crack houses, and I gradually realized that my billable clients were so much less interesting and so much more trouble that I devoted more and more of my time to pro bono work, which was fine until my partners figured out that I was spending all my time on pro bono work, at which point I decided to run for the New York State Senate. I now have a great job being sort of a big pro bono partner for all of the people of the state of New York, and there really is no organization that works better with my office and worked better with me in every phase of my career, whether I was in private practice or I was in the state Senate trying to ensure that there were legal services available to all New Yorkers, than NYLAG. And I have to say, Israel, this is an amazing event. Abby and all the rest of the board members, your honorees, I congratulate you all for your good judgment in supporting one of the most truly effective, aggressively innovative organizations in the state of New York, and I thank you for being here. I do want to say that the turnout tonight has led me to actually, Israel, I have some bad news. Merit Birnbaum is now joining my staff to head up the fundraising for my re-election campaign. But this is this is an event that is no less impressive than NYLAG deserves. I have worked for years on pro bono work as an attorney. As a lawmaker, I was a leading advocate for funding for legal services. It was a challenge because it was during a period of time when nationally legal services were really being cut back. State and federal funding was being reduced. And this is a struggle that you tonight are engaging in that could not be more important. As I travel around the state, I often refer to the right to counsel as the right that enables you to protect all of your other rights. Without the right to counsel, so many things you have rights to, whether they're benefits, whether they're the right to stay in the country if you're an immigrant, the right to police protection if you're a victim of domestic violence, the right to stay in your home if you're a victim of wrongful foreclosure. Without right to counsel, it's very hard to protect those rights. And NYLAG works in all of those areas. Joe pointed out one case where we shut down a fraudulent immigration services provider, and the organization we had confidence in to take over those cases and carry on was NYLAG, and they have done a superb job. Our office works with them, their Civil Rights Bureau, other bureaus all the time. The experience has been uniformly excellent because really providing counsel to those in need is what keeps the American ideal of equal justice under law alive. The ideal of equal justice under law, I'm sorry to say, has really been threatened in recent years. We have rising inequality, we have increasingly complex in many areas, and a lot of people who, if as demonstrated by the video, just don't know what their rights are, don't have access to counsel. NYLAG is, again, the most creative of all legal services organizations in combining pro bono work with public funding in creative ways and aggressive ways and filling this gap. You provide services to the truly poor and to those who would otherwise fall through the cracks who are not eligible for other legal services. I've been forced to look at the issue of the lack of representation of the threat to equal justice under law in New York through all of my work that Joe mentioned on the investigation of the mortgage crisis and the wave of foreclosures that face so many New Yorkers. When I took office as Attorney General, we were facing a situation that we had never seen before in New York. The number of defaults on mortgages, the number of people whose homes were underwater, meaning they owed more on their mortgages than their homes were worth, was unprecedented. And I discovered that in some cases people were being wrongfully foreclosed on because 50% of the people, when I came into office, who were going to foreclosure proceedings or trying to deal with those situations, had to do so without any access to counsel. And funding for legal services for this critical family issue, this critical neighborhood issue, this critical issue for all of us in a community of people losing their homes was being cut. We heard harrowing tales of abuse as we investigated the crisis, people who were being foreclosed on because of mistaken paperwork, people who had the right to renegotiate their mortgages, grandmothers with many grandchildren living with them, who really were faced with a situation where a lot of the folks who were engaged in foreclosure just weren't prepared for this volume of work, and as we know now, engaged in practices like robo-signing and sewer service, and they were only able to do that because they were able to assume that the folks they were going after had no right to a lawyer and would not get a lawyer. And in too many cases, they were right. So my fellow attorneys general and I united with some of our federal colleagues and negotiated a settlement with some of the largest servicing banks over abuses in foreclosure proceedings, and I made it a top priority to ensure that in New York, the most money of any state went to our preservation of legal services, housing counseling, and other foreclosure prevention services, because I know in New York, we have pretty good laws to protect you if you have a lawyer. And ladies and gentlemen, working in the state legislature, if anything, to be candid, sometimes we pass too many laws. The important thing is to make sure that people have a lawyer to help them protect their rights. That's true in health care, that's true in immigration, that's true in all the areas NYLAG works, but it is a particular problem right now in the area of mortgage foreclosures. And I'm proud to say that the money that we got enabled us to stave off a different sort of crisis. All of the money in the state of New York for foreclosure prevention work, for housing counseling and legal services, was set to zero out April 1st of this year. There was no money left. There was none allocated in the state budget. We were able, through the servicing settlement, to save those programs, and one of the first recipients of funding from our work was NYLAG, and they will use it wisely and well. So my commitment to you is that if I have anything to do with it, no New Yorker will ever be wrongfully foreclosed on. That's to say, foreclosed on when they really do have a right to stay in their home because of a lack of legal representation. We've committed to funding these services for the next 3 years without regard to what happens with the state legislature. We don't want this to be caught up in budget wars. Ultimately, I've been working with my colleagues and allies in government, and I particularly have to mention a great supporter of the cause of civil legal services for all, Chief Judge Jonathan Lippman, who's a partner of mine in this effort. And he and I have conferred on many occasions about a strategy to ensure that everyone in the state has access to counsel. Our long-term goal simply is this: NYLAG and any other group, there's no other group that's quite like NYLAG, but all other providers of legal services, this is such a cheap way to protect so many rights. Every person we prevent from wrongfully losing their health care benefits, that saves our state and our community money. Every person, every family that's kept in their homes, so kids aren't pulled out of schools, so people aren't displaced and communities aren't saddled with the problem of empty houses that aren't maintained. Every time you save someone by preserving their rights, you help everyone in the community, you help everyone in the state. Our commitment to equal justice under law, the commitment that you are demonstrating by being here tonight, must be unwavering. I'm committed in the area of mortgage foreclosures and in any other area we deal with as Attorney General in my office, and there are people from my office here tonight, and many of them have worked with NYLAG over the years. We are committed as an office and as an organization, and we will not stop until the state of New York recognizes that everyone needs a lawyer, and the creative and innovative strategies of NYLAG should be I'm not saying they should rip you off, Israel, but they should be emulated by other organizations all over the state. You are a model. You are an example. You are a success story. And I cannot thank you enough for being here tonight to support one of the greatest organizations I've worked with in my career as a lawyer. Thank you.